I was thinking about my garden and I realized I don't share this view often enough. And honestly, the majority of my garden is lawn, and I have built out spaces over time, little by little. And as I've been building them out, I've been learning things and sharing them with you here on YouTube to try to make gardening easier and more approachable. But I was looking around and I started getting nostalgic. So 8 years ago, one of the first things that we did when we moved in, this was a foreclosure. It was a crazy jungle, but we leveled this area out. And with that meant a lot of blank space, and everything back then was just lawn. There was one large sugar maple that was kind of centered, and unfortunately it was diseased and it had to be taken down. And then there really was nothingness after that. And as somebody that loved seeing flowers and plants, I wanted to fill this whole place up. But honestly, if I had done that from the very beginning, I would be in the whole thousands of dollars, and the majority of these plants would probably be dead because I knew nothing about gardening. So in this video, I want to share with you my top strategies for starting a garden, how to add color into your garden without adding stress, and how to do that affordably. In this video, I'll also call out a couple of rockstar plants that are super easy to grow and great ones if you're just getting started. And then I'll throw in some plant labels as I'm taking you around my garden for plants that grow really well and are looking fabulous this time of year. So let's get started. This bed right here was actually the first bed that we ever planted up. And I was so overwhelmed when we first flattened everything out and we were starting with basically a blank slate. Every time I looked outside, all I saw were dollar signs. How am I ever going to create a lush look when plants are so expensive? When I first started gardening, I leaned very hard on any way to get a lot of plants affordably. So things that worked really well for me were getting divisions from neighbors, asking my neighbors that had a pretty garden if they were splitting plants and I could take some. These ferns over here, those are all from neighbors. I also did a lot of bare root gardening. So the majority of the hostas that you see here in the garden, they are from the Costco bare root boxes. And there's also bulbs in here that bloom in the spring. Those are very affordable. And also dicentra that come up, which are those bleeding hearts. Those are spring bloomers that you don't see now because they're all in the soil resetting for next year. But that was how I started filling out some of the space. Another thing we did was go bed by bed. So I would create one bed, fill it with plants, watch it, water it, take care of it, because once you plant something, you do have to do a little bit of work until those plants are established. And then that next season, or maybe a month from now, I would carve out another space and start planting it up and think about what I could add. And that's the evolution of my entire garden. So I worked one space, filled it with plants, as many plants as I could afford at the time, and see how they grew, and then decide if those were the right plants, should I shift it? And once I kind of stopped killing plants and instead of buying the right plants for the right light and learning which plants grew well, I would move on to the next bed and I would expand and create something next door, or I would make that existing bed bigger as the plants grew. And over time, things got built out little by little. And yes, it takes much longer this way, but also I think the journey is the best part. And while I'm not anywhere near finishing my journey, I don't think I want to be, because I'm still learning and I'm still growing as a human while my garden is still growing. And that's the best part, I think. But I don't know, maybe it's just me and I'm done being sappy now. While I'm over in this section, I'd be really remiss not to point out this Japanese maple here. I actually got that at an estate sale, and I haven't done it in a while, but I used to go to estate sales with my husband, and he would start looking for tools in the garage or if there was a shed, and I would go outside and look at the plants, and I would always ask, like, hey, how much for that tree if you wouldn't mind if I dug it up? Or how much for those perennials if I just took a little bit? And I even got daffodil bulbs that way. So this is something that I've had to work on inside myself, but asking for the things you like. You will be surprised how many times people really don't care about the landscape, especially in an estate sale type setting. So That Japanese maple right there, I brought home for $20, so definitely don't be shy about asking. You just never know when people are going to say yes. A great way that I have saved probably hundreds of dollars in the garden is by buying smaller plants. The smaller the plant, the cheaper they are. Actually, the easier they are to get established to your growing conditions because they haven't spent as much time in their perfect soil, the container soil, which a lot of the times is very different from the soil that you have growing in the ground. So all of that to say is buying smaller plants, if you can find them locally, that's amazing. I was never able to find them locally. This hydrangea is Tough Stuff hydrangea, and I bought it as a quart-sized hydrangea for less than $20. 3-gallon hydrangeas in my area run anywhere from $45 to $55. So if you have the time to be a little patient and you can put in smaller plants into your garden, they will grow into that amazing full-size plant in a year or two. So highly recommend buying smaller plants. I find my quart-sized plants from Great Garden Plants because, like I said before, I have a hard time finding them locally. If you can, definitely do that. But plants grow, so don't be afraid of buying a smaller size and planting them. They're easier to dig, they're cheaper, and they're gonna do great for you in your garden. An easy strategy for you to save a lot of money in the garden and fill your space for less is to focus on planting perennials that spread or are easy to divide. This is Autumn Joy sedum, but any of the sedums are very easy to divide, and so you can spread them all over your garden, and basically you buy one plant, you get a gajillion free. I have this all over my garden because it's just one of those plants that divides so easily. So if you're trying to fill in a lot of space, focusing on plants that divide easily and you can spread around is one affordable way to do that. Let me show you another plant that divides amazing, and I pretty much put everywhere in my garden. This right here is Mongolian aster. It is another plant that can be very easily divided, spreads really well, and blooms for a really, really long time. In fact, this fall, I'm going to take from this bed and put it in a couple more spots because it's just very easy to plant and divide, and it grows well and it blooms all the time. So why not? One thing about Mongolian aster is it is really hard to find your first plant, if that makes sense. They don't really grow well in containers, and containers are the way plants are sold in stores. So things that don't look good in containers, people tend not to buy, and because of that, this isn't sold too many places, but if you can find it, even to get one plant going and established, I am pretty sure the following year you will have enough to divide and spread to another spot in your garden. They're really, really robust growers and just fantastic plants. Another thing that I think has worked well for me over time is starting with a smaller garden space and expanding as the plants expand. That way you have a space that looks lush and full, and it might not be very big, but as the plants expand, the best thing about plants is that they are movable. For the most part, there are a couple of plants that don't like being moved, but for the most part, perennials are very adaptable and very easy to move. So this bed is one example of that. And actually almost all of my beds are examples of this. I planted just a few perennials here and I planted them way too closely. But as this plants needed more space, I was able to carve out a bit more space here or expand into the lawn here. And as you can see, I have lots of lawn that I can expand into. In the process of moving perennials, you'll often accidentally divide them. So it's a really great way to expand a garden bed for not a lot of money. I will add a couple of new plants here and there. These are the plants from my recent plant haul. So here I added in Glowstick and I also added in a butterfly bush and a Shasta daisy. And the garden bed used to stop right here. So I got another, 2 feet and added just a few more plants. So I still get to add some fun new varieties and try them out in my garden, but I'm also not spending a gajillion dollars every year doing that. And I'm slowly building things out so it's easier to maintain and water over time. This space right here is another space that I built out completely with perennials that I had just right here. This bed used to be very narrow. It was very small. It wasn't the best design, but I knew that eventually I wanted to expand and conquer more of the lawn, so it was okay. I took all of those perennials and I spread them out. They all needed more sun anyways because of the crepe myrtle we have here. So I spread them out, and the only thing that I purchased were 3 new shrubs. I added 3 flowerful hydrangeas, which are the new Annabelle type hydrangeas or smooth hydrangeas. from first editions that are supposed to have stronger upright stems and also have a ton of flower power. So I wanted to add those, and this was the perfect excuse to just rearrange the rest of the perennials, fill in this space, and expand the garden relatively affordably. So if you're looking at your backyard and you see a lot of lawn and you're thinking, how could I ever create a lush garden? It is bit by bit. And while the majority of the time I am zoomed in and focused on a bed and I'm showing or telling you the plants that I'm planting and have worked really well for me, I hope you also know that the majority of my backyard actually looks like this. Lots of lawn, lots of future opportunity and spaces to expand into, but I have limited resources, and so I do what I can with the money that I have in the time that I can, and I'm just enjoying the journey and the process. So I wanted to make this quick video in case you're also looking around your backyard, wondering how you're ever going to take your backyard that's currently full of lawn and turn it into beautiful garden spaces for you and your family to enjoy. It is bit by bit, and it's a beautiful journey. I always end videos by saying thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel, and I will see you in the next video.